Welcome to Bigfoot
and the Bunny.
This is a couple's journey into the mysterious,
the unknown, and the
paranormal. I'm your host, Chris Carr.
And I'm your host, Kristen Johnson.
Together we are Bigfoot and the Bunny.
Welcome to Bigfoot and the Bunny. Happy Saturday. I'm your host,
Saturday.
Chris Carr.
And I'm Kristen Johnson.
And we're back again. We've had a busy week. Yeah, we did 2 shows on Thursday, almost back to back. I had wonderful guests. We talked to Michael Gell and
Adam
Gell. Well, I'm confused. You know what it is? Well, the second show was Michael Lynch. So, yeah, I know a lot of you guys saw those, and thank you for staying up late while we talked to Michael, and we had a lot of laughs. So
Yeah.
great episodes, and
audience was wicked fun.
it's fun.
Yeah.
It was long for us doing 2 shows, but we should get used to it. I mean, what the heck? We're just sitting here yapping. Right? It's a beautiful day here in New England where we are. It's 87 degrees. It's sunny, and yeah, I'm sure a lot of you are at the beach or outside enjoying stuff, but if you are here, we really do appreciate you joining us from whatever part of the country or the world you might happen to be in. We wanted to talk a little bit about Ubaid figurines, because I'm not sure if this came up Thursday when we were talking to Michael, but I came across some pictures, and we've seen these pictures before, but I didn't know a lot about them. They very much look like aliens, or, you know, the lizard people. Is a certain point in time in Samaria. The period, the Ubaid period, ran from 6500 to 3800 BC. It's a prehistoric period of Mesopotamia, and the name derives from Al-Ubaid, where the earliest large excavation of Ubaid period material was taken. So that they just called it that because that's the area that they found it. But these figurines are super interesting. They're different than a lot of the figurines that came or were discovered before and after, because they don't seem to exploit a lot of sexuality. Like, you know, a lot of these prehistoric figurines tend to have dingles going on. They're very phallic, you know, and it's very clear which is the male, which is the female. Right. And there's less of that. There's also things that show possible body modifications, which might be what's the word for that, babe, where they tie the head and they elongate the skulls if they weren't truly already elongated. They that body modification, they tie the baby's heads with the ropes. Yeah, supposedly it's only speculation. I don't know that they know that's true, but their faces are very strange. So I'd like to go ahead and maybe share a couple of these things with you. Bear with me. I got so many tabs open. So many tabs.
So many tabs.
Uh-oh.
So do I.
Hope I didn't close the wrong one. Let me see here. Share screen. Thank you, StreamYard. Well, here's one here. If I can make that any bigger. You can see that they're quite lizard-like, very alien-like. Take a look at that. I don't think I closed the one I actually wanted. Bear with me.
I'm still getting pages up, so.
Oh, I'm bringing out the pages. How's the hamster wheel going there?
It's fine. Just wiped out everything.
Oh, there they go. Okay, well, I'm going to show this page from Reddit. And I'll take that one off. I'm going to add one more. I'll bring our guest on.
Unbelievable.
That's all right. I clicked the wrong button. Hey, it happens.
It does.
It happens. This is live. I want to say live radio, but we're just kind of live on the interweb, which is the new radio, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. I'll just share this here. There's a Google of a bunch of them. And I'll click on a few for you.
Sure.
Yeah, look how strange these are. I mean, they are really kind of bizarre, right? Reptilian.
They
A lot of
do.
people do call them reptilians.
Yes.
Yeah, like this one's very interesting. Like I don't know what these little kind of balls are. It looks like a spacesuit or something, right? Like look at that. Okay, yeah, really strange. Look at the eyes. You can see the eyes are slanted. They're kind of swollen out, slanted, but you have a distinct nose, conical skull, and these weird balls. And what are they holding there? That isn't a baby. Here's a well, all right. So this one here does have some sort of genitalia going. I guess that's a male, I think. Is that an Audi, babe?
That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be. Could be.
Could be. Could be.
So Ubaid, UBAID. If you're interested in this, give it a look. Give it a perusal because very strange stuff. Was only a certain period of time the figurines look like this. Some of them appear to have like tattoos and other body modifications, as mentioned. And we just think that's fascinating, right? Like that's crazy. Like, what were they doing? What were they thinking at the time?
Right.
Or were there reptilians there at the time?
Or was it maybe their gods that they were trying to represent at the time?
Could be, you
Mhm.
know, and the holding the baby, maybe the baby is humanity. But let's move on to bringing on our guest because we're psyched to talk to our good friend Robert Lindsy Milne. He began reading tea leaves before he could speak English. The Toronto native had humble beginnings as the 19-year-old hippie psychic working in the tea house. That's a story we've talked about on the show before. Robert's been one of our favorite guests, and he's been on a few different times. And if you want to know more about those tea leaf readings, because that is a hell of a story, just you go back in the archives or wherever you're watching us right now and check it out. But he has since grown to become recognized across the continent as one of the most insightful psychic intuitive counselors of his time. You'll be fascinated by his work with a coma patient, something we have talked about. Maybe we'll touch on that again, and how he was able to cure a very rare disease as featured in the book, The Perfect Predator. He is now the host of the hit podcast, My Side of the Crystal Ball.
Mm-hmm.
Let's bring him right on. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you. Are you sure you're reading the page? Is that about? Have you got the right bio there? You know,
that is the one I have. I don't know if it's the latest, greatest. If it's updated, send it over to me, and I'll save it.
I was just thinking of all the things that all the great things that you said about me. That's what I was asking. Maybe you were reading somebody else's bio.
Guy, you know. That's all you hear. We love these stories, and I know a lot of our listeners know about how you started out reading the tea leaves as a teenager and grew into so many other things. Now you host this wonderful podcast. We were just talking about one of them. One of your guests, Susan Walter, that you had reached out to us, and there was this crazy synchronicity of like I had just watched the episode. And it had been out for like a week or something. I forget how long, but I went back and I saw it. I said, "Oh yeah, that's interesting. Angels. Let me click on that." I had been thinking about angels at the time, and sure enough, like as soon as I was done, it was almost like, like a second later, our email lit up, and it was Susan saying, "Hey, are you guys interested in having me on?" I said, "Yes, of course we are, Susan."
Yeah. That's great. That's how I met her. She reached out to me. She saw my podcast and reached out to me and asked if she could come on. And she was the very first person that ever asked me if she could be on the show. So we had a short talk and she was on the next episode. That's how it started. It was really fun.
As I recall, there may have been a couple paranormal researchers that we're all familiar with that also were on your show at one point.
Oh yes. Can you you too. Right. Oh, of course.
Yes.
Right. Of
we
course.
had a blast.
Did you? That was
we did. We had a great time, and it's a wonderful episode. And again, I'm going to say this several times. I want people to get out there and check your podcast out if they're not familiar with it already. It's on YouTube. So if you go onto YouTube, YouTube gives you the worst links. Our page on YouTube has some crazy numbers and letters at the end of it. So it's hard to give you the link. The easiest thing to do is just go to the search bar and type in my side of the crystal ball, and you'll pop right up.
Oh, by the way, this is the first time I've said this publicly. We also now are on iHeart.
Nice.
Yeah. Well,
Cap all gone off.
Michelle is the one that did all that work. But yes, we're now on iHeart, and that's pretty good because we haven't even been doing the show for a year. We've only done 20 episodes. Well, 21. Including the one about Tilly. So that's pretty good to get that. I'm having a lot of fun with it too.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And I like the audio podcast. One of the things we have to think about a lot of times is that people will just listen to the show. And sometimes when I get, into things like the pictures of the UBA period that I was just showing, it's hard to be descriptive. So if you're listening and you're frustrated by that, I apologize. We are working on being a little bit more descriptive because they can't see the pictures, right?
Yes.
And I believe the last time we had you on, we also had these cat balls, they call them, right, which is just an affectionate name for our little cat toy turned paranormal tool. There it goes.
Oh, yes.
Again. And they were going off a lot the last time we talked.
Here. That's right.
Really?
And we've had them on for a couple of shows now, and they've been dormant, haven't said it,
And now they're sparkling.
Now they're sparkling. So
wow.
There
Must
you go.
Be our connection, the three of us. That's what it is.
I think so.
If we would have spoken about me having a podcast this time last year, I would have said, no way. It just no way. It wouldn't happen. I couldn't imagine that I would be doing a podcast. So that's really amazing thing for me, certainly at this time in my life, where I'm having this podcast and that people are liking it. And also I'm doing readings and connecting with different people now, and it's really such a privilege at this stage to be peaking the way I am. I'm just so grateful every day for this. It's just wonderful. It's great being me right now,
Great be to
what was that skit? It's good to be the king. I think it was a Monty Python.
Yeah, or something like that. And well, I'm doing what I've always done, and I'm doing it better than I've ever done it before. I just can't do it as much or as fast. And I'm talking about how I'm doing readings and things like that. But if there were ever a time in my life, if I could choose to have a reading from me at any time from the time I worked in the tea room to now, this would be the period.
You feel like you're like at the peak of your
yes
psychic ability. That is awesome, and we want to talk a little bit about that psychic ability.
Let's.
You are, as I've referred to in the past, a from the gut psychic, which I think is the way to be.
Yes.
It is what the information that hits you, you just you put it right out there,
sure,
unfiltered. We talk a lot about psychic abilities and filtering because we're into remote viewing and different things, and they're all on the same path. And as soon as you start to filter that information, that's when it becomes a story and not true information, right?
Yes, that's right. Well, when I can take a group, I have, and I can, and one day again will. I've taken groups of people up to 300, a little bit more, and as low as a group of 10, and anywhere in between, a group of strangers. Put them in a room together with me for the day. Well, they know they're in there, they're there. And I guarantee to everyone that at the end of the day, they will be able to do psychic readings for strangers. And wow. I guarantee it that, and if they can't, then I just give them back their money. And over my lifetime, I've given it back 2 or 3 times, and that's it. And what I do is simply show people. The first thing I do is share with people. They don't need to know what it's called. They don't need to know if they're being psychic, intuitive, whether they're being an empath, whether they're being a clairvoyant or a clairaudient. It doesn't matter what it's called. just do it. And that's always been my attitude. It also might be because I had trouble with literacy in my life as well. So I just relied on what I sensed anyway. So as soon as people become aware that it's a natural instinctive ability that most of us have, there's some that don't, but almost everyone does. So once we become aware of those basic skills, then we can make them more complicated or more detailed. I myself am not really that interested in making studying something, and I'm used to just coming to the answer and then going on to the next solution. So I see it like in mathematics, you get points for or you get marks for knowing how to get to the right answer. Well, being psychic the way I am, I just get points for the right answer. And that's what I'm looking for. It doesn't matter how I get it.
And that's what you got to do, because the results are
Yeah.
where you want it.
Yes.
If you overanalyze these things, then it becomes something else, and you're trying to connect dots, and you're not necessarily giving a better answer. You're giving a filtered answer.
Now, there may be people, actually, I just thought of this when we were talking about it. Now, there may be people, and in fact, that need to have something to identify, start off with, well, I am being clairvoyant. Maybe they might need to have that before they can just get in touch with their senses and go with it. I think maybe I just thought of that. That just came to me now. So there are people that need to have a guide, whether it be the guide being tarot, whether the guide being a crystal ball. Like I've had this crystal ball for about 40 years. I don't use it, but well, it sits beside me. But there are some people that actually have to have something to trigger ideas. Whereas when I'm being psychic, I just do it.
Yeah. Oh, I do want to give a little shout out to some of the folks in the audience today.
Sure.
Thank you for your comments. I see Joshua Dixon out there has put a few comments out. He says, "Hi friends, busted my ass today."
Oh goodness.
We can say that word on here, among others. And all week, sorry I missed Dr. Michael. And he went on to mention that in Turkey they do coffee readings. Also wanted to say hello to Alwyn. I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name, so I'm not going to butcher it. But she says hello from the UK, Great Britain, Johnny Depp all the way.
That's right.
And Kristen's been watching that. I don't know if you're watching the Johnny Depp
Amber Heard
trials, Robert.
No, I haven't.
Not, but Kristen likes it.
Well,
I
don't
haven't
even get
yet.
me started.
Anne-Marie Young, how you doing? Good to see you again. Joanne Stewart, how you doing?
Hi, Joanne.
Appreciate you're joining our show. And Ann says, I believe that too. Labels put you in a box. I don't like boxes.
That's very true.
That's right.
We
That's
do not.
right. Can't have those labels. I can't label everything. We do like to know the hows and whys of stuff and try to think about how it might exist. I mean, we have different theories about the consciousness being outside of the body, and that, I think it is definitely bigger than like what's in your head. And a lot of people have this conception that everything that goes on psychically is solely in your head. But we know from things like people having heart transplants that feelings, memories, things can get transferred to another person. They start to remember things that another person had experienced. So,
Right.
It seems to be on a
that had the
cellular
heart.
level and perhaps on an etheric level. Perhaps all these things are bigger, and that is how maybe we're connected through this sort of subconscious, and we're able to get that information. But it's actually our brains that sit there and go, oh, I see the color red, so that must mean it's an apple. And when, the information wasn't an apple at all. If that makes any sense. Hey, I had a little coffee this morning, Robert.
A little.
Oh, I'm thinking about what you're saying. I wasn't sure about the last comment, but I was listening to what you were saying and thinking about it. And
Ken out there. Hey, Ken from the Wizard's Table.
The Wizard's Table.
Table.
We love you.
Another podcast we're fans of. And
You have
had
to
the
sing
pleasure
that.
of being on as well.
Yes. Sorry, Robert.
No,
Sorry.
what I was thinking about was the and I've heard this before about heart transplant patients having feelings or taking on characteristics of the person whom they received the heart from, and I was thinking about how that would be. I was just thinking about how I was thinking about how that would work, and I was just thinking that's why I was more serious. That's all. It was really interesting.
It
I
makes
haven't
me
got a
think
conclusion yet.
memory and parts of our consciousness are, kept throughout the body. A lot of people talk about chakras, for instance, right?
Well,
They
yeah.
say, well, you have the, this chakra on the crown of your head. You have this like third eye chakra. You have a throat one that's supposed to be associated with communications, and a heart one that's green, and it's associated with love and relationships in a way. And then people
Okay.
get a transplant, and oh my gosh,
Can
they
we
remember.
okay, so I'm dying to. Okay, I've got to let this come out. So
Sure.
I was just thinking about why specifically we were talking about a heart, but if we look at our body overall and look at if think of a glass of water. I'm just doing this off the top of my head. So think of a glass of water, and the glass of water is pure, and it's water. Now, if you put one drop of something else in the water, it is no longer 100% pure. And
Right.
that one drop has an energy inside that glass of water. The bigger the more substance you put in the water, the greater part of that substance becomes the water, and the water becomes it. And eventually, say like a big organ like the heart, would be carrying lots of energy from that other being, and coming into the physical body, it would become part of that physical body, and the memories and the energy and all that heart had would come into the physical body. I think that's how it worked. So now that was just off the top of my head. I hadn't thought about it ever before, and I was just putting it together. So that's what I would think.
Yeah, sure. I can just imagine, like, if my middle finger were to be removed and replaced with someone else's, it might just flip up all the time.
Right. Or you might just look at it all the time and say it ain't mine.
Yep.
Right. It would just be like flipping people off like cashiers and stuff. And be like, getting my what's wrong with you, man? I'm sorry, I had a finger transplant.
Honey, Jeff lost his middle finger. That's funny. Okay.
Yeah. We took that back to Johnny Depp even. There you go.
That's right.
So yeah, I haven't been paying very much attention to the news, and one of the reasons is because it just stresses the hell out of me. Another reason is I'm more the type of person, like, I'm not smart enough to solve world hunger. I don't have the awareness to make peace. What I can do is help the person in front of me, and that's what I can do, and that's what I focus on mainly in my life, and that's so that's my main focus. So I can make a difference in.
You've got to think about the domino effect from that, right?
That's right.
And that person now feels better about something, they go on and he passes the message on to someone else.
The way to live. It's like pass it forward.
Now, that's the way it is when I do readings. But it's also, and I'm starting to accept this, but it's also the way that I've lived my life, not as a psychic doing psychic readings, but being in places where there are emergencies and someone is in trouble, and in that moment step in and help that person, and then just leave. And I do that. Things like that happen to me all the time, and I just thought it was because I was well, they happened, and I just thought it was because I reacted because I'm a nice guy or I was kind or something. And I'm now realizing that these happen too many times for that just to be coincidences. And I'm realizing that throughout most of my life, that this is what I've done. For example, I've recently moved, and like at the beginning of the month, and I moved from the north end of Toronto right into an area called Corsa Italia, which is right in the heart of Little Italy, and it's an amazing, wonderful place. Last Friday night, I was walking up and down the street trying to find what I'd like to eat, and I couldn't find anything, and I got frustrated. So this was at about 10 o'clock at night. And finally, I decided just to go to a certain chicken store and say, okay, I'll just have that, because it was right at the corner and pretty close to where I live. So I got that, and then I started walking home. And walking home the way I would be on the east side walking south. Anyway, as I'm walking home, all of a sudden I notice that there's a guy laying on the ground.
Oh my God.
And he's laying not on the sidewalk, but on a lawn, but it wasn't his. And he's laying there, and there are people that have been walking by him and things like that. And I looked down at him, and I saw him, and I thought, oh, now what should I do? Because I wasn't sure if he was drunk or sick or what. So I stood there for a moment or two, and then I was about to make a decision. That was to connect with the guy, and all of a sudden, right beside me, this woman appeared, and she had white blonde hair, and it was short like that. Now, I didn't get a good look at her. She was beside me, and she spoke to me, but I didn't really get a good look at her because I was focusing on the guy on the ground.
Sure.
But she was telling me about the guy on the ground and what she said to me. And she was speaking to me, and she said, he has his breathing passage is blocked. His mouth is closed. He's breathing through his nose, and that's what she told me first. And then I dialed 911, and then the operator came on, and the operator told me, asked me some questions, and the blonde woman beside me gave me the answers to the questions she was asking. And then the 911 woman said to me, okay, so go over to the guy. See, I was really hesitant. I didn't really want to touch the guy, right? Because you never know.
Right. You never know.
That's right. But like if he would have needed mouth to mouth, I'm not sure he would have made it. But in that moment, so the 911 operator, she said, put your hand on his forehead and put your other hand under his neck and lift his neck up. Well, just before I did that, the woman with the short blonde hair said, here, I'll hold your phone. And I just handed it to her. And I did what the 911 operator told me. And then I said to the 911 operator, I said, oh, I'm smelling a lot of alcohol here. And the woman with the white hair said, there is a lot of alcohol, but there's something else worse that's involved. Anyway, a couple of moments, he started to breathe a little bit better. And then the paramedics and the fire department arrived. And when they came, I just sort of stepped back. And I couldn't, the woman was gone.
She had vanished.
She wasn't there. Well, she gave me back. I got my phone. I got my phone back, but she wasn't there.
You say you handed her your phone. Was it just like on the ground near you, or?
No, she gave it to me when I stood up, but then she was gone. That was it. So I'd finished I did whatever I needed to do. I did like my job, and I just started walking in the same direction, going home. Except all of a sudden I realized that I live at 5191 on my street, and I noticed that I was all the way up to close to 2000.
Wow.
And what I realized is that I was actually walking on the west side of the street, and I was walking north.
Wow.
And so I turned around and walked back, and the guy was sitting up now with the paramedics. And the paramedic told me that because I was, I was there. She said that he had a fentanyl overdose.
Oh goodness.
And anyway, so
how do you think you ended up on the other side of the street?
Yeah.
Going the wrong way? I mean, that almost sounds like alien abduction phenomena. And the person you're talking to, the blonde-haired lady, Joshua had mentioned
Sounds like
as
a
well. We were,
spirit
of course,
guide.
thinking like sounded like a spirit guide, maybe his or
well,
yours.
well, these things occur in my life and have occurred in my life ever since I can remember. I usually just go through it and then go on. I'll give you another example of this, and it forces me to accept that I get led or I get directed, and I've rejected that my whole life. So, and I'm starting to accept the fact that it ain't all me. That I might be influenced or directed or guided, and maybe I didn't know it, because if I would have accepted it or knew it, I might not have done it. I might not have allowed myself to be directed. So I'm still working on that. These are things that I've just been learning about my life and my work over the last year or so. It's been quite amazing. So there was this one time again. I had to go to the dentist. My dentist was downtown in Toronto at Yonge and Queen, and I was farther north. And there were two ways to go. The quick way was to get on the subway, go straight to Yonge Street, take the subway south on Yonge Street to Queen Street, and that was where my doctor was. There's the long way where you get off at a different station. It's called St. George. Then you go down a platform, get on the southbound train, and then it's 4 more stops more, but it gets to Queen Street. I always used to do the easy way. This one day, I don't know why, I was going to my dentist. I don't know why I went on I got off at St. George, and I went down the steps to the north and southbound platform, and I heard the train come in, and I ran down the stairs, and as I was running up to the train to get in, the doors started to close. So I stepped back, and a woman came running past me, put her foot on inside the door, the subway train, and the door closed on her foot, and the train started to move. And I reached down, put my hand around her leg, and pulled her foot out of her shoe. And then I stepped back. When I stepped back and let her go, the train was starting to move well, and her shoe and the train, or her shoe was starting to bounce on the platform and against the train, and it was bouncing. And this woman bent down to try and get her shoe. And as she was bending down to get her shoe, and there was a big space between the two cars, she started to fall into the subway tunnel head first. And once again, I grabbed her around the waist this time, and I pulled her back. And then as I pulled her back, I remember hearing another train come in, and I looked over my shoulder, and I realized that I actually was on the wrong platform. I was on the northbound platform, and I needed to be on the southbound platform. So I let go of her, and then went over and got on the train on the southbound. And when I looked back, there were a couple of people hugging her because she was crying and stuff. And a couple of stops later, I said, "Oh, you might have saved her." And these things happen all my life. It happens. Not
like
always as. Pardon?
You were led there to be there. You needed to be there.
That's the point that I was making.
Right, right. You just turned up
Okay.
there. You might have been walking, been in kind of a, just daydreamy
Absolutely.
type state.
Absolutely.
And there you are,
Absolutely. That's
right?
it.
And there's the thing we
That's
talk
right.
about a lot is that daydreamy state, where you're almost like you're being hypnotized in a way. You're just kind of like, you're just going away. You're just lost in your head. You're not really paying attention. Sort of like when
Sure.
you go for a long drive and you wonder how you got there so fast. Like, oh, wow, it just happened. An hour went by and I'm
Mhm.
at my destination.
Sure.
It seems like that you're more open to messages when you're in that sort of in between state.
Well, I obviously have been directed. It happens too many times. Now I like it. I don't dwell on when when I have these experiences. They happen, and then I go on to doing whatever it is that I do. We're going to be doing next, whether it be readings or my podcast or partying, whatever. I just also leave behind the experience too. It happens, I handle it, and then it's done. That's
Since you've been hosting a
Mhm.
podcast, you've gotten
Yeah.
to talk to a variety of people, and I'm not sure if you've had like
Great.
alien abduction type folks on there.
Not
But
yet.
what we've found is that there's a lot of similarities to exactly what you're saying, and you see similarities between that to the paranormal to the psychic fields.
What
There's
are
a
the
lot of
similarities you're seeing, Chris?
Well, for instance, a download would be a similarity. So a person may just suddenly come upon something, or they have an experience while they're in that state we were just describing. Like it's almost like that's where you're open to other things, whatever they may be, or whatever labels, boxes, right? Like we mentioned earlier, we put on them. A lot of times I think they're one and the same. And people have these experiences, and they might experience like time lapse. And wow, an hour went by and I didn't know where I was, but
Right.
I have this memory of, encountering somebody and this thing happened. Or you met somebody in the street and you helped them.
That's
Your
right.
Well, that
experience is very
experience
beneficial, and that's wonderful.
that experience with the guy on the street, the whole time, it was maybe 5 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and that can be a long encounter for me. Usually, it's one time I was at Banff at the Rocky Mountains, and I was at the Banff Springs. I was at Banff Springs where the hot springs are, and it was pretty busy that day, and I was in the water, and my partner was Deborah and I were in the pool, and I kind of heard a splash behind me, and I sort of looked around and nobody was paying attention. And then I looked over and I saw a kid under the water, and I just reached down, grabbed his arm and picked him up and just put him on the side of the pool. And his mother picked him up and didn't even know he was in the water. And I just handed him to the kid. And then then Deborah and I talked about stuff. Yeah. So
on that note, the cat ball goes off again. There you go. I think you're getting whatever spirit is around's approval, if that's what it is. That's the
really. So, that's interesting. So I'm discovering these things, and I'm understanding them now, as before I never did.
Yeah. Do you find that the experience of hosting the podcast has brought a bunch of new ideas into your realm, into your consciousness, getting to talk to so many different people with different insights and them explaining their experiences to you? That's what it's been for us. Like, it's the greatest gift of doing this is being able to talk to so many interesting people and varied.
One of the greatest things that my side of the crystal ball has brought to me is I have been able to see how far, how advanced, how successful this field has become. And it is things that, I've been, professional psychic for 57 years. When I started, you could get busted for doing psychic if you're getting
That's
paid.
right. It was illegal.
It was illegal.
Yes.
Yeah. And to how things are so open today, and how accepting this is, how mainstream. But I've seen in those early days new ideas happening. but I never bought. Well, for example, Carillion photography.
Hmm.
Okay. I remember when Carillion photography was introduced to Canada, and it was like this. It looked like a camera, and it had a sleeve in it, and you put your hand and you put your finger over a metal thing, and they take a picture of your finger, but yet what they actually are doing is taking a picture of your aura. Now, that's a crude instrument. Let's go 50 years later or 45 years later. I'm talking to Dr. Kimberly McGeorge.
Oh, yes.
And she's talking to me about, and she's showing me this technique where they take a picture of, and I go, oh my God, that's where Carillion photography has gone.
Yes.
Oh, wow. And so,
Right?
so I'm seeing those kinds of things. And it's so exciting because I saw them when they were just being, why did you do that already? Just talking when I was talking now?
That's a Carillion photography. Supposedly there may have been some other things done, but that's
Right.
me and my aura on that day.
Okay.
I
Yes.
took my daughter to see
Right.
Nicole Magic, who's been a guest on our show as
Right.
well.
Ah, okay.
And, there you go. There
Yes.
it is.
There it is.
You can
Right.
see myself as
That's
kind of
right.
the purple, but
That's
this
right.
green halo is
Yeah.
around me, and
Yeah.
I found that fascinating.
So, conversely, going back to what we started with way at the very beginning, when we talked about being just in touch with, being in tune with being psychic, and not worrying about what it's called. Now we flip forward to 2022, and we see how all these fields have evolved because of people paying attention to those details. And developing all those skills in all those other areas. This has been just glorious experience for me. It's just, wow.
Yes,
That's wonderful.
Kimberly is wonderful. She's fun to talk to.
She's fun, but
Yeah.
She has a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, we've talked to her a couple of times.
So it's how like there are people that have doctorate degrees that are doing psychic readings.
Mhm.
Wow.
Exactly.
I never could have imagined it.
No.
Like, wow.
Robert, it has always been there in the background. It's just that it's getting more attention from the public now.
Sure.
It was
You know,
underground.
It
That's
kind of
right.
all
Well,
started in
yeah.
the spiritualist movement, like in the late 1800s, early
Sure.
1900s. We had doctors and people doing mediumship, right? So the idea of doing a seance or table tipping was a form of entertainment for like the general public, who might sit skeptically, and rightfully so, because a lot of it was bunk, for lack of a better word. But you also had doctors working in psychical associations began to pop up in the US and in London, and they were looking at the stuff scientifically, things like a remote or psychic drawings, which would be titled remote viewing in the 70s, actually started back then, and ideas about telepathy and this, and trying to debunk it or prove it or whatever it is. But I think you're right. It's new generations, new attitudes. People can look at this with maybe a less skeptical eye.
Well, profoundly less skeptical. I remember when I first started touring, appearing on radio and TV shows across the continent, there were protests outside the radio stations or TV stations, and there were times where people would picket outside a hotel that I was staying at, or hassle people that were coming for readings. So and I lived through that era as well.
That's right. I mean, Jesus, the 1980s. When I was growing up, I listened to a lot of heavy metal records, and I remember watching on the news, different towns in these kind of right-wing Christian groups burning the records, because they were sure that their teenagers were going to worship the devil.
Iron Maiden, Osbourne,
and Motley Crue, and whatever it is, or Merciful Fate. And I thought that was so interesting. Joshua says back in the 60s, you'd be arrested for doing crystal ball readings, etc. And that is what Robert was talking about.
That's right.
Started out, it was actually
it was called the Witchcraft Act in Canada, and it was section 326, I believe, and it stated everyone who fraudulently, and it was assumed legally that doing anything like this was fraudulent. So anyone who fraudulently tells fortunes for consideration, gives medical advice using an occult or crafty science, accusing somebody of a crime using an occult or crafty science, and I can't remember the last one, but and would be punishable by summary conviction of not more than 1 year in jail and not more than $5,000 fine. And that law was initiated in the late 1800s in Canada, and it was dropped from the Canadian Criminal Code. It was July 1st, 2019.
Imagine that, all the way to then.
Yeah, it was the same day that cannabis got legalized. I'm not sure if there's a correlation there.
They put some targets on that day. That's a good day. That's like, the falling of a Berlin Wall or something.
Sure, that's
Yeah,
right.
hey, here we go.
That's right. That's right. So
that's awesome.
So from the day I started working at the Cozy Tea Room until July 2019, I could have been busted at any time at work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Never got really hassled. I did get hassled by the police a couple of times because I didn't want to do what they wanted me to do. So it was either, if I didn't help them, they wouldn't let me work in the city. So I helped them.
Wow.
That's great.
No, that is fascinating. And
Yeah.
in his book, Penetration by Ingo Swann, he talks about some of that repression. We think about those things when you hear about those laws, you think the government is doing it solely to protect the public from, maybe less than scrupulous individuals doing, fortune telling or whatever they want to put on it. But there's also sort of a certain repression. Like, I don't know. I feel like they don't want you to know too much.
Those people who did that were of a very specific religious group. So it was their feeling about anything other than what we believe in is wrong, evil, of the devil. So there's no redemption.
Yeah, that goes back to like the colonists, the Puritans coming across to the U.S. and persecuting people like the Quaker community, which was spoken on a lot because they're fascinating. They were treated like witches, but their real crime, Robert, was that they didn't have priests and they spoke directly to God. And the Puritans would have none of this. As far as they were concerned, they were the devil, and they would maim these people on the boats coming across who were seeking religious freedom, which we're all supposed to be about, right? Cut off their ears and whip them, jail them, and eventually they hung 4 of them. They're called the Boston Martyrs. In fact, fascinating stuff. History is just so telling of the human condition.
Yeah, my people, my kind, were persecuted for a long time. And when I was young, when I was a kid, I certainly wasn't encouraged to do any of this type of stuff. And when my family in those early days heard that what I was doing, I was very definitely an outcast.
Understandable. I understand that completely.
Now, it's a different story today. But I was kind of an outcast then. Well, my father never, ever, ever accepted what I do. My dad died last August. He was 92, and he never, right to his last breath, he never ever accepted what I did.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
I
hope it does.
I got to the point where I stopped caring whether he accepted it or whether he didn't. And I got to the point where his opinion about it was irrelevant, simply because the example I would think of is it's impossible to describe the color orange to somebody that has never had vision. So someone that's blind from birth, you could not explain to them what orange is. And if you get mad at them for not being able to, or you get frustrated because they can't, it's not about them, it's about you. And it took me maybe like up until last year to accept that. Well, maybe it was longer than that. There was a period where I was kind of semi-retired, and then recently, last couple of years, I've just come back. My dad wanted to see some of my shows or hear them, and I didn't want him to hear them or see them.
Oh, wow.
I didn't want him to. I didn't want him to share in my success when over the years it had been so he'd been so harsh about, or so rejecting of what I did.
Opposed.
Like things like saying to me, I'll go to my grave believing my only son's a fraud and a charlatan,
Oh my God.
And he also said that I was the only guy he ever met that never had a job, so there was that. We did have a bit of conflict, although mostly it was sorted out, but it really got sorted out on these things when I stopped caring or wanting him to accept that. And then when I stopped wanting it, then it was so much easier for us to get along. So what I did was I accepted him for who he is. I learned that in dog training. So one of the people that helped me with dog training, one time I was, involved in an event, and the handler, me, made the mistake, but I got mad at the dog, blamed the dog, of course. And Wally came over to me and he said, Robert, don't get mad at a dog for being a dog. I thought, that's right. And then he said, don't get mad at a coyote for being a coyote. That's right. And then I thought, don't get mad at somebody who is a jerk. Just accept them for who they are, rather than expecting them to be who you want them to be. It just gets so much easier.
Sure.
So much easier.
Do you think your father's opposition to your career choices and what you were doing growing up was a driving factor to prove him wrong and maybe pushed you further into it?
What it did more than anything is in my early days, like, up until 70 or 68 or something, in my early days, I really wanted him to see what I was doing and how much I was doing and how successful I was getting. And he just would not. I got to the point that I accepted I would never get accepted, and I stopped trying. And then I was really at peace. So I'm not sure if I answered your question right, but
yeah, I think you did. I think you found peace later in life, but initially it probably pushed you to.
Oh, yes, that's right. What I did though is from now the first time I left home, I was 14 and a half. And then the second time I was 15 and a half. And I never lived full time at home again after that time. So I grew up on the streets, survived by my psychic abilities. So I thought that if I lived up to a standard of morals and values that really were a high standard, and he always professed to have these high standards and values, and I did my best to achieve them, and they were very honorable values. What I realized later in life is what I aspired to and achieved for the most part. My reputation, and those that know me, I've worked very hard at that set of values and way of being. What I realized is that I was aspiring to something that didn't exist, and that what he professed he was and what he was profoundly different. And so, yes, his rejection of me did inspire me to be a better, be a more evolved, giving, loving, honorable being.
It helped make you the person you are now.
Yes, that's right.
And, I know we were talking about
okay, you understand that
before
sure.
the show. When one door closes, another opens.
Absolutely, that's true.
And that pertains to I know a story you wanted to tell us.
Okay, so the biggest tragedy, individual tragedy that I have ever had, happened on February 20th, 21st, 2002. And that was the biggest, greatest tragedy. And as a result of that tragedy, that even right now, I could easily start to cry, turned out to be one of the greatest things that ever happened, and created a series of events and experiences over a 20-year period that have been glorious, incredible, and it is a process that is still going on, and still as beautiful, and it's all around dogs. And had I not had that tragedy with Tilly, I never would have experienced Kindred Spirit, Dixie, Tessa, Lacey, Tyson, Christy Kringle, and all the other dogs that have come down and stayed with me at from the breeder, and all the dog classes I was in, and all the dogs. I wasn't a very good dog trainer, but I had fun in it. But all the dog shows that I was in, and all the ribbons. My dogs would have been so much more successful if they would have had a better handler. So my dogs are champions. I have incredibly close friends. All my dogs after Tilly have been a gift to me. Every single one have been a gift. And it was all because of what happened to Tilly. Now, it was, if I were, and it's been 20 years, a little bit more, that it happened. And still, when I talk about it a bit, I get touched. If I and the 20 years that and all the dogs and all the experiences and the beautiful things, if I were put to the test today, in a moment, what choice would you make? I don't know. But I wasn't given a choice of what happened to Tilly, but I was given a choice of what was going to happen to me and what I did. And I turned that tragedy into something glorious and beautiful. That not only in me having dogs, but my dogs have also bred, and their dogs, their puppies have gone on to champions, and it continues to spread. And I know 7 generations of my dog Tessa's. I know, I know Tessa. She's my dog. I knew her mother. I knew her father. I knew her grandfather, her great grandfather. Goes back like 5 generations. I actually knew them. I patted them. I walked. And had that not happened, I wouldn't have known Tilly, or I wouldn't have known them if that hadn't happened to Tilly. And if I hadn't have reached out to open that door that is available that we can walk through once one door closes. So when one door closes, another one opens, but you have to walk across the hallway to get through the door.
Mhm.
or you have to turn the doorknob and open the door to get through. But it's always there, and you can always do it. And no matter how long you take, you can still always um, go through that open door, the next door, after something terrible has happened.
Understandable.
The date hits me a little hard personally. I think you said it was February 20th, 2002. I lost my father this year, February 20th, 2022.
I'm sorry
And
for your loss.
thank you. And, we didn't have, we tumultuous relationship at times, but I loved him dearly. And, yeah, it makes me think there's something about the story I got to learn because, yeah, I agree with you. One door closes, another opens.
Well, dogs came to me late in life. For my life, and when I was younger, I was on the road all the time. I was traveling on shows and doing readings, and my main focus still is doing what I do. I didn't have time for anything else but that, but it was a lot of fun. At about 48, and I was in a pretty strong relationship then. I got a puppy for my stepdaughter. Well, I thought it was for her. And when we went out to get the puppy, I chose a puppy. Well, it was my idea. So I chose the puppy. And the very first day, like the very next morning, Tilly, she's at 10 weeks old, let me know that she was a part of my work. And I wasn't going to let her sit in the room when I was doing a reading. And she stood outside the door at 10 weeks old, cried, scratched at the door, would not stop. And I brought her in the room, and she went over and sniffed the client's foot or something. Then she came and sat down beside me. And from that day on, Tilly was beside me with every reading that I had done for 5.5 years. And wow. she was a constant companion. The relationship I was involved with broke up. I had the animals. When I had Tilly, I never ever let anyone ever look after her. Well, one time, and that one time, and the person looking after her, she got out, got hit by a car, and got killed.
God, I'm so sorry.
That's what happened.
Sorry. Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
I see.
And it was pretty
so
tough.
Close. My father loved his dogs as well. Like they were just, my siblings and I used to joke that they loved the dogs more than us, and
well,
but
one of the things for me was it was the first time I'd ever experienced unconditional love. I'd never had that in my life. So having it was, and there had never been anyone ever that's not doing the reading or getting the reading. I'd never had any other energy in the room with me. And then Tilly was, and I'd never had any other energy in. So it was that's right. It hurts. They are children, of course.
They are.
Yeah. Well, people who have had a lot of trauma sometimes have difficulty having complex relationships with humans. But higher forms of mammals, dogs, cats, horses, and dolphins, I don't know why dolphins, but dogs, cats, horses, and dolphins happen to have an emotional bond that humans and they bond with. These are the ones. And those beings have similar emotional needs and relationship needs as humans, but their relationships aren't as complicated or as complex as human relationships. So that's why people often who have had a lot of trauma and hurt are bond with animals or other species, other forms of
It's interesting you mentioned dolphins because I was just watching something about a dolphin's EQ, which is the encephalization quotient, which it refers to the ratio of the size of the dolphin's brain relative to its body size.
Mhm.
And the dolphin's EQ, as they call it, is 4.2, the closest EQ ratio to humans than any other animal.
Okay. Well, I guess that's the reason.
More
Um,
emotions, yes.
Yeah. So, well, mammals have certain traits, and when they're pack animals, they work together, nurture young. So they're similar, and we humans are mammals.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
Yeah. So that's sometimes the reason that people are into animals.
Joshua says, I think Tilly knew the spirit work and wanted to help you and your clients by helping them.
Oh, she was very much a part. When my client would, she worked with me. It wasn't that she sat beside me. When my client would come hit to the door, I'd escort them in, and then when we'd get to my sitting room, Tilly would escort them to their chair. And then when the person would sit down, Tilly would sit in front of them and allow the person to pat her. And what she was doing was calming the person down for me. And I would walk around, do other things in the room, and I would observe the relationship between Tilly and my client. And then I'd sit down, and I would when I'd sit down to do the reading, I would take my wand. Here's one of them, my magic wand, and I'd tap it on the floor, and then Tilly would come over and sit beside me or lay down beside me.
Wow.
And then when the reading would be over, because she could tell by the tone of my voice, and she would get up and walk over and sit in front of the client and help complete the reading. So she was a part of my work as well.
It is intriguing, these connections. I know Rupert Sheldrake is a person we like
Very
his
much.
writings. He talks a lot about panpsychism and consciousness studies.
Mhm.
And he talks about the relationship between people and their dogs, often like how the dog knows when you're on the way home and gets ready without,
Yeah.
really hearing your car
Well,
yet.
they're psychic.
Oh.
They sense us.
They do.
Yeah,
They
that's
do.
right.
Did you ever feel like Tilly would give you indicators about the reading of a person? Like,
Oh, absolutely. She would. Well, even now today, always, my dogs meet my clients, and they give me indications, but Tilly started it. And I would be able to tell where that person was by the way Tilly was handling them or was with them. If Tilly stayed away, I'd pay a lot of attention to that person. If I would pay attention mostly to how the other person, the person was relating to her. And I would watch how their mood changes or things like that. Tilly was conscious of what she was doing.
Oh, I
She knew.
believe it.
Yeah, she
Natalie
knew.
Mosley says, both my horses were incredibly spiritual,
Oh,
psychic.
yeah.
They're
Most
very
definitely.
deep beings. It is true about higher mammals being close to us,
Oh, yes.
relationship wise, without being as dishonest.
I had horses as well growing up, so I understand that.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
But no.
Or they just don't have the capacity to be anything other than real.
That's
And
true.
that's because their analytical brain hasn't been fully formed. If we just got rid of our analytical brain, which we won't, but we would be very much like those slightly lesser developed mammals.
Very true.
Okay, so that's what differentiates us is when we start to analyze and think, and then is when the complexities happen. Of
Joshua
course,
says
like,
cats
that's
are
very
extremely
special.
psychic too, and Kristen and I are both cat owners, and we'd have to agree.
I have one.
I had
So
2
good.
dogs and 3 cats. The cats also worked with me, and all 3 of them. And there was a time where 3 dogs and 2 cats, and it depended upon what client came in, what animals were in the room. Some wouldn't be in the room with some people. Some would be in the room with others. Sometime one would get up and leave, and another one would come back, or another one would come in. So even they picked and chose.
Oh, for sure. We have a video out on our YouTube channel,
Yeah.
and I'm just going to give ourselves a real quick plug because we're trying to
Please
build
do
our
that.
YouTube.
Yes.
We do really well on Facebook, but our YouTube definitely needs people. And if you're out there and you're on YouTube, please look up Dark Horse Paranormal Productions
Yes.
and give us a subscribe, like, comment, all that kind of good stuff.
Comment. Yes.
There is a video there, and I think it says Cats and Ghosts or something like that.
Yeah.
I took it a few years ago, and it's my cat King, and you can
Yeah.
see him follow something that was in my bedroom, and I have like a REM pod, which Robert is this sort of paranormal device that picks up on static electricity, and it's going off, and the cat's clearly looking at something. Go out there, you can watch that, and please give us a subscribe.
Okay. Well, yes, I'm going. Well, as soon as I heard that you were on YouTube, I said to myself, go subscribe. I already had that. I already had that planned. But by the way, and
Yes, and while you're there, we want our folks to go and subscribe to My Side of the Crystal Ball.
Yes.
oh
please.
yes, please, yes, we need that.
Like,
This is
subscribe,
Robert's podcast. It's fantastic.
comment.
We enjoy it.
Yes.
Some more comments out here. Ken from the Wizard's Table says, I have 14 cats and they live outside. They keep rats and snakes away from the house.
Great.
Yeah.
Wow.
Forget about that.
Yeah, they do have a duty. Cats, were domesticated just like dogs, really. To
My
breeds of
my
dogs
cats
as well.
participated in the readings, and my cats and my dogs slept together and played together.
Oh, that's so cute. I love that.
They were, in fact, Tilly was with my little kitten when she gave birth to her kittens, and we kept 2 of those kittens. And Tilly, when we would come home from work, Tilly would run upstairs and go where the little kittens were, and Daytona, the mother, she would go downstairs and have lunch or dinner and drink, and Tilly would be laying beside her little kittens, and then Daytona would come back upstairs, and and so those kittens, those cats were like they were very, very comfortable with dogs, and yeah, so they all interacted.
I had a dog come into my house, my cats would beat the hell out of him.
Well, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Well, unless
When
they
they're
grew up
babies together, yeah.
Thing. Yeah.
they're brought up together, they can all get along. I've
It's
seen
like-
cats playing with people's parakeets and stuff on
That's
that
right.
aforementioned
That's
YouTube.
right.
And
Yeah.
they go, wow,
If they can meet before they become an adult, then they can be friends. It's like 2 intact male dogs. If they're friends when they're puppies and they grow into they have their when they mature, and they, as long as they do that together, or at the same time or in the same time frame, that they'll stay friends as adults. But if they stop seeing each other, they'll fight.
Yes.
Now, here's a tough question for you.
Okay.
You've been doing this, I think you said 57 years?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a long time. If you were to say how many readings you've done
It's
for people,
over 100,000.
Oh,
Over
my goodness.
100.
There's been
100,000.
more than 100,000 psychic connections in my lifetime.
Come on.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Robert, that's a
When I was like working at
amazing.
the tea room at I was 15 and a half, and I worked there till I was late in my 20 at 21, almost 22 when I left. And in that time, I usually worked 5 days a week, sometimes 6, on occasion 7 days a week. Some days I would do 30 readings, and then some days I would do 10 or 20. And that would happen all the time. So every day I was doing readings, one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. And that was like a boot camp. When I was working on my own and I was starting to do radio and TV shows, and I was touring in my 20s, I would do 20, 30 half-hour readings a day. And I would do 10 half-hour readings in a row. And then I would take a 1 hour break. And then I would do another 10 hours. Then I'd go out and party all night and then do it again the next day. and now if I stay up late, I get tired. So
We understand.
yeah.
Yes.
So
We're
so and I did that routine, and I would do that for weeks at a time, and then come home and take a week off, and then go back on tour again. And that happened. I was doing that much well into my 30s, and then I started cutting back to like 16 a day, and then 12, or down to 14, then 12, then and then 10, then 8. Then I started adding more time, and now I do about 3 readings a day.
It's not too bad.
Oh, that's great. What the point of that is that if you're getting a reading from Robert, you are getting 57 years of experience. You're talking to somebody who's done over 100,000 readings. People can find you on the worldwide interwebs
They can.
at your website, which of course is www.rlm for Robert Lindsay Milne readyou.com. And I spell that out because
Can I just say something else? My new email address is robert@robertlindsay.milne.com.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank
Okay.
you.
I think I emailed you today at the other one, so I'll update.
They all come in anyway, but that's the main one now.
They go to the same place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. That's easy for
That's
people
right.
to remember. And your last, or I should say, your middle name, Lindsay, is
Yes.
spelled Lindsy. There's no E in
There's
there.
no
That's
E.
right.
Robert
I had
Lindsay.
nothing to do with that.
Right.
Parents, huh?
I totally
That's
understand.
right.
Just a couple more comments from the audience, and we'll let you wrap up, and we'll tell people where else to find you. Joshua's looking for a link. He also mentioned, Robert, I saw 3 robins, 3 butterfly families today. What do you perceive that as? I don't know if that's something you can.
That's
I'd say it's a pretty good day.
I'd say it's a good day. It's a beautiful day. It's
Yeah.
spring, going into summer. There are birds. I'm out feeding my birds, and
I wish.
Yeah,
I was.
I'm not quite that symbolic type of person. I don't have anything I can connect it with.
no,
right
understood.
now.
I would think
Yeah.
that's just Mother Nature at work. And if it made you happy, Joshua,
Yeah.
then that's a good sign.
Absolutely, we agree. I mean, I've been waiting for the hummingbirds because we have a hummingbird
Yes.
feeder, and yesterday, finally, Squeaky, his name is. He came back. He comes
Yes.
over to. It's weird. He comes over to me first, and he scopes me out, and I don't move.
Sure.
And then he goes up into the thing, and it's so cute.
The feeder.
And he squeaks every time.
He does. He's got a little squeak to him.
I'm like,
and,
I'm so happy
we
you
like the
came
birds.
back.
We got a little deck over here, and I like
call it
feeding
the
them.
bird's nest.
The cats are very intrigued with the bird's nest, and
Yes.
are looking out the window, peering and meowing
Joshua
those
said thank you.
creatures.
Yes.
But
Thank you.
I want people to know you got your YouTube channel, My Side of the Crystal Ball.
TikTok,
Oh, wow.
Apple, Spotify, and iHeart. Wow, I just can't believe this.
Yeah, right? It's awesome.
It's
It is
fantastic.
So
Yeah.
awesome.
So people can go and check out your episodes. You've talked
Yes.
to a variety of great guests.
Yes.
We enjoy it. It's very, very insightful. You tend to have a section on there called "What Would Robert Say?"
WWRS. Yes.
WWRS
Yes.
is a new acronym for you guys. Do go check it out. It's a lot of
Please.
fun. This has been a great show. It's always good to talk to you,
Love
Robert.
talking to
Thank
you,
you.
Robert. Thank
And
you.
I've had a great time. I'm just gonna
Thank
pull
you.
you out of the stream, and we'll be right with you. Wrap things up for our audience. Thank you so much. You guys have been awesome. Happy Saturday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Right here in New England, it's absolutely gorgeous. Not sure where it's like where you're at, but go out, enjoy it anyways, even if it's raining, snowing, pouring, or hailing.
No.
Go have a good time. Thank you guys so much for participating. Thank you, Joshua, Anne-Marie Young, Ken from the Wizards Table, Scott Steffen, Natalie Mosley, everybody that joined. Thank you guys so much. We love you. We'll see you guys next Thursday on the Dark Horse Paranormal Podcast. Till then, have a great weekend. Enjoy your week. Stay safe.